Make sure that my volume's actually on this time. Um, Hello, welcome back to Cafe Darcadia. I am Raina, and in the background we've got Sagrell. He's a little busy at the moment. He will be joining shortly. Um, we will be continuing reading Bram Stoker's Dracula tonight. We are on chapter 2. I'm going to wait for him to come back in a moment because he's getting a video clip for us. Um, Something that I will be sharing at the end of chapter 2. Also, we were thinking about doing a possible question and answer thing sometime soon of if people would like a little bit of lore about us, we'd be willing to answer some questions. But we will be posting when that's going to be happening at a later date. I'll say if you want to, General Setsuban, I I have a loading thing on my screen. Why is there a loading? What is that? There's a loading ring. Do you see that, General Setsuban? Or is that just me? Honey, I have a loading ring on my screen and I don't know why.
What?
My hair. Bad hair day. There's a loading ring on the screen. It's right in front of the bar where you're at. I don't know what this is for.
Go to your sources.
Sources.
Boop. Okay, click where the ring is.
Click.
Nope. Okay, so it has to be something that's locked.
Okay.
Okay.
So do I just unlock everything?
Yeah, unlock everything. And try
Click.
Click. That. Hold on. You have the red box around it.
Okay, so
Keep clicking. Click one more. Now. See how it has that highlighted? See if you can hide it with the little eyeball button. There you go.
what?
It was for when we were doing dual stream or on video together.
Oh, so it was trying to look for you?
Yeah.
Even though we have this still image
Yeah.
of you behind the bar.
That's it, honey.
Oh, hi Dark Vigil. It's good to see you. For those who don't know, I actually work with Dark Vigil in real life. He's actually a good friend of ours. He's a little goblin. He's a really good friend. As I think he goes by the name Bottles, if I remember correctly. I hope the loading ring went away, didn't it? I apologize. I am wasting a little bit of time here because I will need Sagrel fairly shortly after I start reading.
I'm trying to grab it.
I know, sweetie. I know. You're doing your best, honey. And that you always do. I love you, honey.
3 or 4 clips, I think.
That's fine. That's fine, honey. And we actually have a little bit of a challenge for one of our moderators here, General Setsuban. Can he stay awake the entire stream? Thank you, Dark Vigil. Because he let me know last time that he actually fell asleep, which honestly, I take that as a compliment. I like to think of these as bedtime stories, so if you fall asleep, I don't get offended at all. I'm trying not to move my head too much, otherwise my hair likes to go up into my face. But yeah, so apparently we got rated by another streamer. Um, my husband Sagrell submitted us, and we're gonna actually play that clip afterwards. It was very interesting to watch, and yeah, I because both of us happen to be Winter Court Fae. My husband is a lot more obviously Winter Court, and people get confused with me. Yeah, most people think that I am Spring or Summer Court. I am not. I just I like to wear more color versus the darks that the Winter Court usually do. I'm sorry, I'm starting to run out of a few things here to talk about. General Setsubun, feel free to come into the Twitch chat with me if you want to. So far, first chapter that we had, it was Jonathan Harker was making his way to Castle Dracula, and he has actually just arrived. We are on chapter 2 now. I'm actually thinking about doing it just one chapter at a time. There are 27 chapters actually, so it depends on what we do earlier in the day or not. If I read more than one chapter, it depends on if people in the chat want to hear me read more. Unfortunately, I will have to get up very early tomorrow morning, so I won't be able to read more than one chapter this time. And then I've also got some friends at the Chaldea Gurus who will be streaming tonight too, which I would like to catch a little bit of that as well. So
I got the 2 clips.
Awesome, thank you, sweetie.
So they're in our clips Discord.
So if they're still streaming by the time that I'm done, I'll probably see if I can end up rating them. Are you ready to join?
Yeah, I'll be on my way over in just a second.
Okay. So we've even got the
just grabbing a couple pieces over.
The rewards and challenges now, so that way people can earn points during the stream. Alright, so are you ready?
Yep.
Alright, so we're going to start with chapter 2. I get my hair out of my face there. So it's going to be Jonathan Harker's journal continued. And again, I do apologize. I'm probably going to be butchering a few words, as I do not know the correct pronunciation for them. Alright, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. 5 May. I must have been asleep, for certainly if I had been fully awake, I must have noticed the approach to such a remarkable place. In the gloom, the courtyard looked of considerable size, and as several dark ways led from it under great round arches, it perhaps seemed bigger than it really is. I have not yet been able to see it by daylight. When the caleche stopped, the driver jumped down and held out his hand to assist me to alight. Again, I could not but notice his prodigious strength. His hand actually seemed like a steel vice that could have crushed mine if he had chosen. Then he took out my traps and placed them on the ground beside me as I stood close to a great door, old and stubbed with large iron nails, and set in a projected doorway of massive stone. I could see, even in the dim light, that the stone was massively carved, but that the carving had been much worn by time and weather. As I stood, the driver jumped again into his seat and shook the reins. The horses started forward, and trap and all disappeared down one of the dark openings. I stood in silence where I was, for I did not know what to do. Of bell or knocker there was no sign. Through these frowning walls and dark window openings, it was not likely that my voice could penetrate. The time I waited seemed endless, and I felt doubts and fears crowding upon me. What sort of place had I come to, and among what kind of people? What sort of grim adventure was it on which I had embarked? Was this a customary incident in the life of a solicitor's clerk sent out to explain the purchase of a London estate to a foreigner? Solicitor's clerk. Mina would not like that. Solicitor. For just before leaving London, I got word that my examination was successful, and I am now a full-blown solicitor. I began to rub my eyes and pinch myself to see if I were awake. It all seemed like a horrible nightmare to me, and I expected that I should suddenly awake and find myself at home, with the dawn struggling in through the windows, as I had now and again felt in the morning after a day of overwork. But my flesh answered the pinching test, and my eyes were not to be deceived. I was indeed awake and among the Carpathians. All I could do now was to be patient and to wait the coming of the morning. Just as I had come to this conclusion, I heard a heavy step approaching behind the great door, and saw through the chinks and gleam of a coming light. Then there was a sound of rattling chains and the clanking of massive bolts being drawn back. A key was turned with a loud grating noise of long disuse, and the great door swung back. Within stood a tall old man, clean-shaven save for a long white mustache, and clad in black from head to foot, without a single speck of color about him anywhere. He held in his hand an antique silver lamp, in which a flame burned without chimney or globe of any kind, throwing long quivering shadows as it flickered in the draught of the open door. The old man motioned me in with his right hand, with a courtly gesture, saying in excellent English, but with a strange intonation,
Welcome to my house. Enter freely and of your own will.
He made no motion of stepping to meet me, but stood like a statue, as though his gesture of welcome had fixed him into stone. The instant, however, that I stepped over the threshold, he moved impulsively forward, and holding out his hand, grasped mine with a strength which made me wince, an effect which was not lessened by the fact that it seemed as cold as ice, more like the hand of a dead than a living man. Again he said,
Welcome to my house. Come freely, go safely, and leave something of the happiness you bring.
The strength of the handshake was so much akin to that which I had noticed in the driver, whose face I had not seen, that for a moment I doubted if it were not the same person to whom I was speaking to. To make sure, I said interrogatively, Count Dracula? He bowed in a courtly way as he replied,
I am Dracula, and I bid you welcome. Mr. Harker, to my house. Come in. The night air is chill, and you must need to eat and rest.
As he was speaking, he put the lamp on a bracket on the wall, and stepping out, took my luggage. He had carried it in before I could forestall him. I protested, but he insisted.
Nay, sir, you are my guest. It is late, and my people are not available. Let me see you to your comfort myself.
He insisted on carrying my traps along the passage, and then up a great winding stair, and along another great passage, on whose stone floor our steps rang heavily. At the end of this he threw open a heavy door, and I rejoiced to see within a well-lit room in which a table was spread for supper, and on whose mighty hearth a great fire of logs flamed and flared. The Count halted, putting down my bags, closed the door, and crossing the room, opened another door, which led into a small octagonal room lit by a single lamp, and seemingly without a window of any sort. Passing through this, he opened another door, and motioned me to enter. It was a welcome sight, for here was a great bedroom, well lighted and warmed with another log fire, which sent a hollow roar up the wide chimney. The Count himself left my luggage inside and withdrew, saying, before he closed the door,
You will need, after your journey, to refresh yourself by making your toilet. I trust you will find all you wish, and when you are ready, come into the other room, where you will find your supper prepared.
The light and warmth and the Count's courteous welcome seemed to have dissipated all my doubts and fears. Having then reached my normal state, I discovered that I was half famished with hunger, so making a hasty toilet, I went into the other room. I found supper already laid out. My host, who stood to one side of the great fireplace, leaning against the stonework, made a graceful wave of his hand to the table, and said,
I pray you, be seated and sup how you please. You will, I trust, excuse me that I do not join you, but I have dined already, and I do not sup.
I handed him the sealed letter which Mr. Hawkins had entrusted to me. He opened it and read it gravely. Then, with a charming smile, he handed it to me to read. One passage of it, at least, gave me a thrill of pleasure.
I much regret that an attack of gout, from which malady I am a constant sufferer, forbids absolutely any traveling on my part for some time to come. But I am happy to say that I can send a sufficient substitute, one in whom...
I'm supposed to be reading that, I just realized.
Oh, my lord!
I much regret that an attack of gout, from which malady I am a constant sufferer, forbids absolutely any traveling on my part for some time to come. But I am happy to say I can send a sufficient substitute, one of whom I have every possible confidence. He is a young man, full of energy and talent in his own way, and of a very faithful disposition. He is very discreet and silent, and has grown into manhood in my service. He shall be ready to attend you when you will during his stay, and shall take your instructions in all matters. The Count himself came forward and took off the cover of a dish, and I fell to it at once on an excellent roast chicken. This, with some cheese and a salad, and a bottle of old Tokay, of which I had 2 glasses, was my supper. During the time I was eating it, the Count asked me many questions as to my journey, and I told him by degrees all I had experienced. By this time I had finished my supper, and by my host's desire had drawn up a chair by the fire and begun to smoke a cigar which he offered me, at the same time excusing himself that he did not smoke. I had now an opportunity of observing him, and found him of a very marked physiognomy.
Oh,
Physiognomy. Pardon me. His face was a very strong, aquiline, with high bridge and a thin nose that perpendicularly arched nostrils, with lofty domed forehead and hair growing scantily around the temples, but profusely everywhere else. His eyebrows were very massive, almost meeting over the nose, and with bushy hair that seemed to curl in its own profusion. The mouth, so far I could see it under the heavy mustache, was fixed and rather cruel-looking, with peculiarly sharp white teeth. These protruded over the lips, whose remarkable ruddiness showed astonishingly vitality of a man of his years. For the rest, his ears were pale, and at the tops extremely pointed. The chin was broad and strong, and the cheeks firm, though thin. The general effect was one of extraordinary pallor. Hey, Mr. Brawl. Hitherto I noticed the backs of his hands as they lay on his knees in the firelight, and they seemed rather white and fine, but seeing them now close to me, I could not but notice that they were rather coarse, broad with squat fingers. Strange to say, there were hairs at the center of the palm. The nails were long and fine and cut to sharp point. As the Count leaned over me and his hands touched me, I could not repress a shudder. It may have been that his breath was rank, but a horrible feeling of nausea came over me, which, do what I would, I could not conceal. The Count, evidently noticing it, drew back, and with a grim sort of smile, which showed more than he had yet done his protuberant teeth, sat himself down again on his own side of the fireplace. We were both silent for a while, and as I looked towards the window, I saw the first dim streak of the coming dawn. There seemed a strange stillness over everything, but as I listened, I heard, as if from down below the valley, the howling of many wolves. The Count's eyes gleamed, and he said,
Listen to them, the children of the night. What music they make.
seeing, I suppose, some expression in my face, strange to him, he added.
Ah, sir, you dwellers in the city cannot enter into the feelings of the hunter.
Then he rose and said,
But you must be tired. Your bedroom is all ready, and tomorrow you shall sleep as late as you will. I have to be away till the afternoon, so sleep well and dream well.
and, with a courteous bow, he opened for me himself the door of the octagonal room, and I entered my bedroom. I am all in a sea of wonders, I doubt. I fear, I think strange things which I dare not confess of my own soul. God keep me, if only for the sake of those dear to me. 7 May. It is again early morning, but I have rested and enjoyed the last 24 hours. I slept till late in the day, and awoke of my own accord. Then I had dressed myself. I went into the room where we had supped, and found a cold breakfast laid out, with coffee kept hot by the pot being placed on the hearth. There was a card on the table, on which was written,
I have to be absent for a while. Do not wait for me. D.
so I set to and enjoyed the hearty meal. When I was done, I looked for a bell so that I might let the servants know I had finished, but I could not find one. There are certainly odd deficiencies in the house, considering the extraordinary evidences of wealth which are around me. The table service is of gold, and so beautifully wrought that it must be of immense value. The curtains and upholstery of the chairs and sofas and the hangings of my bed are of the costliest and most beautiful fabrics, and must have been fabulous value when they were made, for they are centuries old, though in excellent order. I saw something like them in Hampton Court, but there they were, worn and frayed and moth-eaten. But still, in none of the rooms is there a mirror. There is not even a toilet glass on my table, and I had to get the little shaving glass from my bag before I could either shave or brush my hair. I have not yet seen a servant anywhere, or heard a sound near the castle except for the howling of wolves. When I had finished my meal, I do not know whether to call it breakfast or dinner, for it was between 5 and 6 o'clock when I had it. I looked about for something to read, but I did not like to go about the castle until I had asked the Count's permission. There was absolutely nothing in the room, book, newspaper, or even writing materials. So I opened another door to the room and found a sort of library. The room opposite mine I tried, but found it locked. In the library I found, to my great delight, a vast number of English books, whole shelves full of them, and bound volumes of magazines and newspapers. A table in the center was littered with English magazines and newspapers, though none of them were of recent date. The books of the most varied kind, history, geography, politics, political economy, botany, geology, law, all relating to England and English life and customs and manners. There were even such books of reference as the London Dictionary or Directory, the Red and Blue books, Whitaker's Almanac, the Army and Navy lists, and it somehow gladdened my heart to see it, the Law List. Whilst I was looking at the books, the door opened, and the Count entered. He saluted me in a hearty way, and hoped that I had a good night's rest. Then he went on.
I'm glad you found your way in here, for I'm sure there was much that will interest you. These friends
And he laid his hand on some of the books.
have been good friends to me, and for some years past, ever since I had the idea of going to London, have given me many, many hours of pleasure. Through them I have come to know your great England, and to know her is to love her. I long to go through the crowded streets of your mighty London, to be in the midst of the whirl and rush of humanity, to share its life, its change, its death, and all that makes it what it is. But alas, as yet I only know your tongue through books. To you, my friend, I look that I know it to speak.
But, Count, I said, you know and speak English thoroughly. He bowed gravely.
I thank you, my friend, for your all too flattering estimate. But yet I fear I am but a little way on the road, and I would travel. True, I know the grammar and the words, but yet I know not how to speak them.
Indeed, I said, you speak excellently.
Not so.
He answered.
Well, I know that, did I move and speak in your London, none there would who would know not me for a stranger. That is not enough for me. Here I am noble, I am boyar, the common people know me, and I am master. But a stranger in a strange land, he is no one. Men know him not, and to know not is to care not for. I am content if I am like the rest, so that no man stops if he sees me, or pause in his speaking if he hears my word, to say, "Ha ha, a stranger." I have been so long master that I would be master still, or at least that none other should be master of me. You come to me not alone as agent of my friend Peter Hawkins, of Exeter, to tell me all about my new estate in London. You shall, I trust, rest here with me a while, so that by our talking I may learn the English intonation, and I would that you tell me when I make error, even of the smallest, in my speaking. I am sorry that I had to be away so long today, but you will, I know, forgive one who has so many important affairs in hand.
Of course, I said all I could about being willing, and asked if I might come into the room when I chose. He answered,
Yes, certainly.
and added,
You may go anywhere you wish in the castle, except where the doors are locked, where of course you will not wish to go. There is reason that all the things are as they are, and did you see with my eyes and know with my knowledge, you would perhaps better understand.
I said I was sure of this, and then he went on.
We are in Transylvania, and Transylvania is not England. Our ways are not your ways, and there shall be to you many strange things. Nay, from what you have told me of your experiences already, you know something of what strange things here may be.
This led to much conversation, and as it was evident that he wished to talk, if only for talking's sake, I asked him many questions regarding things that had already happened to me or come within my notice. Sometimes he sheered off the subject, or turned the conversation by pretending not to understand. But generally, the conversation he answered all I asked most frankly. Then, as time went on, I had gotten somewhat bolder. I asked him of some of the strange things of the preceding night, as, for instance, why the coachman went to the places where we had seen the blue flames. Was it indeed true that they showed where gold was hidden? He then explained to me that it was commonly believed that on a certain night of the year, last night in fact, when all evil spirits are supposed to have unchecked sway, a blue flame is seen over any place where treasure had been concealed.
That treasure has been hidden.
He went on.
In the region through which you came last night, there can be but little doubt, for it was the ground fought over for centuries by the Wallachians, the Saxons, and the Turk. Why, there is hardly a foot of soil in all this region that has not been enriched by the blood of men, the patriots or invaders. In the old days, there were stirring times, when the Austrian and the Hungarian came up in hordes, and the patriots went out to meet them, men and women, the aged and children too, and waited their coming on the rocks above the passes, that they might sweep destruction on them with their artificial avalanches. When the invader was triumphant, he found but a little, for whatever there was had been sheltered in the friendly soil.
But how, said I, can it have remained so long undiscovered, when there is a sure index to it if men will but take the trouble to look? The Count smiled, and as his lip ran over his gums, the long, sharp, canine teeth showed out strangely. He answered,
Because your peasant is at heart a coward and a fool. Those flames only appear on one night, and on that night no man of this land will, if he can help it, stir without his doors. And, dear sir, even if he did, he would not know what to do. Why, even the peasant that you tell me of, who marked the place of the flame, would not know where to look in the daylight, even for his own work. You would not, I dare be sworn, be able to find these places again?
There you are right, I said. I know no more than the dead, where even to come look for them. Then we drifted into other matters.
Come,
He said at last.
Tell me of London and of the house which you have procured for me.
With an apology for my remissness, I went into my own room to get the papers from my bag. Whilst I was placing them in order, I heard a rattling of china and silver in the next room, and as I passed through, I noticed that the table had been cleared and the lamp lit, for it was by this time deep into the dark. The lamps were also lit in the study or library, and I found the Count lying on the sofa, reading, of all things in the world, an English Bradshaw's Guide. When I came in, he cleared the books and papers from the table, and with him I went into plans and deeds and figures of all sorts. He was interested in everything, and asked me a myriad of questions about the place and its surroundings. He clearly had studied beforehand all he could get on the subject of our neighborhood, for he evidently at the end knew very much more than I did. When I remarked this, he answered,
Well, but, my friend, is it not needful that I should? When I go there, I shall be all alone. My friend Harker Jonathan, nay, pardon me, I fall into my country's habit of putting your patronymic first. My friend Jonathan Harker will not be by my side to correct and aid me. He will be in Exeter, miles away, probably working at papers of the law with my other friend, Peter Hawkins. So,
we went thoroughly into the business of the purchase of the estate at Purfleet. When I had told him the facts, and got his signature to the necessary papers, and had written a letter with them ready to post to Mr. Hawkins, he began to ask me how I had come across so suitable a place. I read to him the notes which I had made at the time, and which I inscribe here.
that's you.
At Purfleet, on a by-road, I came across just a place as seemed to be required. Wink.
Just give us a moment to hydrate because sometimes reading, it can actually drain our voice a little bit. That's better.
Yeah. Okay.
You're right. At Purfleet.
Yeah. At Purfleet, on a by-road, I came across just such a place as seemed to be required, and where was displayed a dilapidated notice that the place was for sale. It was surrounded by a high wall of ancient structure, built of heavy stones, and been repaired for a large number of years. The closed gates were of heavy old oak and iron, all eaten with rust. The estate is called Carfax, no doubt a corruption of the old Quatre Face, as the house is four-sided, agreeing with the cardinal points of the compass. It contains in all some 20 acres, quite surrounded by the solid stone wall above mentioned. There are many trees on it, which make it a place in places gloomy, and there is a deep, dark-looking pond or small lake, evidently fed by some springs, as the water is clear and flows away in a fair-sized stream. The house is very large, and of all periods back, I should say, to medieval times, for one part is of stone immensely thick, with only a few windows high up and heavily barred with iron. It looks like part of a keep, and is close to an old chapel or church. I could not enter it, and I had not the key of the door leading to it from the house. But I have taken with my Kodak views of it from various points. The house has been added to, but in a very straggling way, and I can only guess at the amount of ground it covers, which must be very great. There are but few houses close at hand, one being a very large house, only recent added to, and formed into a private lunatic asylum. It is not, however, visible from the grounds. When I had finished, he said,
I am glad it is old and big. I myself am of an old family, and to live in a new house would kill me. A house cannot be made habitable in a day, and, after all, how few days go to make up a century. I rejoice that there is a chapel of old times. We Transylvanian nobles love not to think about our bones, maybe amongst the common dead. I seek not gaiety nor mirth, not the bright voluptuousness of much sunshine, and sparkling waters which please the young and gay. I am no longer young, and my heart, through weary years of mourning over the dead, is not attuned to mirth. Moreover, the walls of my castle are broken. The shadows are many, and the wind breaches cold through the broken battlements and castlements. I love the shade and the shadow, and would be alone with my thoughts when I may.
Somehow his words and his looks did not seem to accord, or else it was that his cast of face made his smile look malignant and saturnine. Presently, with an excuse, he left me, asking me to put all my papers together. He was some little time away, and I began to look at some of the books around me. One was an atlas, which I found opened naturally at England, as if the map had been much used. On looking at it, I found certain places little rings marked, and on examining these, I noticed that one was near London, on the east side, manifestly where his new estate was situated. The other two were Exeter and Whitby, on the Yorkshire coast. It was the better part of an hour when the Count returned,
Aha!
he said.
Still at your books. Good. But you must not work always. Come, I am informed your supper is ready.
He took my arm, and we went into the room, where I found an excellent supper ready on the table. The Count again excused himself, as he had dined out on his being away from home, but he sat as on the previous night, and chatted whilst I ate. After supper I smoked, as on the last evening, and the Count stayed with me, chatting and asking questions on every conceivable subject, hour after hour. I felt that it is getting very late indeed, but I did not say anything, for I felt under obligation to meet my host's wishes in every way. I was not sleepy, as the long sleep yesterday had fortified me, but I could not help experiencing that chill which comes over one at the coming of dawn, which is like, in its ways, the turn of the tide. They say that people who are near death die generally at the change of the dawn or at the turn of the tide. Anyone who has, when tired, and tied as it were to his post, experiences This change in the atmosphere can well believe it. All at once we heard the crow of a cock coming up with the preternatural shrillness through the clear morning air. Count Dracula, jumping to his feet, said,
Why, there is the morning again. How remiss I am to let you stay up so long. You must make your conversation regarding my dear new country of England less interesting, so that I may not forget how time flies by us.
and, with a courtly bow, he left me. I went into my own room and drew the curtains, but there was little to notice. My window opened to the courtyard. All I could see was the warm, gray, quickening day. So I pulled the curtains again, and have written of this day. 8 May. I begin to fear, as I wrote in this book, that I am getting too diffuse, and now I am glad that I went into detail from the first, for there is something so strange about this place, and all in it, that I cannot but feel uneasy. I wish I were safe out of it, or that I had never come. It may be that this strange night existence is telling on me, but would that it were all. If there was anyone to talk to, I could bear it. But there is no one. I only have the Count to speak with, and I fear I am myself the only living soul within the place. Let me be prosaic, so far as facts can be. It will help me to bear up, and imagination must not run riot within me. If it does, I am lost. Let me say at once how I stand, or seem to. I only slept a few hours when I went to bed, and feeling that I could not sleep any more, I got up. I had hung my shaving glass by the window and was just beginning to shave. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder and heard the Count's voice saying to me,
Good morning.
I started, for it was amazed me that I had not seen him, since the reflection of the glass covered the whole room behind me. In starting, I cut myself slightly, but did not notice it at the moment. Having heard the Count's salutation, I turned to the glass again to see how I had been mistaken. This time there could be no error, for the man was close to me, and I could see him over my shoulder, but there was no reflection of him in the mirror. The whole room behind me was displayed, but there was no sign of man in it except myself. This was startling, and, coming on the top of so many strange things, was beginning to increase the vague feeling of uneasiness which I always have when the Count is near. But at that instant I saw that the cut had bled a little, and the blood was trickling over my chin. I laid down the razor, turning as I did to half-round look at some sticking plaster. When the Count saw my face, his eyes blazed with a sort of demonic fury, and he suddenly made a grab at my throat. I drew away, and his hand touched the string of beads which held the crucifix. It made an instant change in him, for the fury passed so quickly that I could hardly believe that it was ever there.
Take care.
He said.
Take care how you cut yourself. It is more dangerous than you think in this country.
Then, seizing the shaving glass, he went on.
And this is the wretched thing that has done the mischief. It is a foul bauble of man's vanity. Away with it!
And opening the heavy window with one wrench of his terrible hand, he flung out the glass, which was shattered into 1,000 pieces on the stones of the courtyard far below. Then he withdrew without a word. It was very annoying, for I do not see how I am to shave, unless my watch case or the bottom of the shaving pot, which is fortunately of metal. When I went into the dining room, breakfast was prepared, but I could not find the Count anywhere, so I breakfasted alone. It was strange that as yet I have not seen the Count eat or drink. He must be a very peculiar man. After breakfast, I did a little exploring in the castle. I went out on the stairs and found a room looking towards the south. The view was magnificent, and from where I stood, there was every opportunity of seeing it. The castle is on the very edge of a terrible precipice. A stone falling from the window would fall 1,000 feet without touching anything. As far as the eye can reach is a sea of green treetops, with occasionally a deep rift where there is a chasm. Here and there are silver threads, but where the rivers wind in deep gorges through the forests. But I am not in heart to describe beauty, for when I had seen the view, I explored further. Doors, doors, doors everywhere, and all locked and bolted. In no place, save for the windows in the castle walls, is an available exit. The castle is a veritable prison, and I am a prisoner.
That was chapter 2.
Should we do chapter 3? Or
How are you feeling about that? You want to save that for next week?
yeah, I kind of do. All right, so that was chapter 2, guys. Hopefully I can read a bit more. Drop my bookmark.
Whoops.
Hopefully I can. Sorry, my model glitching there a little bit. Hopefully I can read a little bit more next time.
How did you guys like my voice as Dracula? I don't read aloud very often, so I was trying my best.
I've actually been trying to see if I can get him to read some of the Norse mythologies, because I have a Norse mythology book. He kind of doesn't want to, because
I don't want to step on your toes, honey.
I like listening to that too. But you think you're tired of me falling asleep while you're reading, aren't you?
I have to go like 60% of the way back to the story every time you fall asleep.
You have an amazing reading voice. It's so good.
If you want me to try that, let me go grab one real quick. Let's see.
Well, I want you to show the videos first, and then you can read it if you want.
Clips from stream.
And how do I show them in stream?
So, what we're going to do is you're going to open up that, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to OBS. You're going to go to sources. You're going to add a new source. And you're going to do a browser window. Cool. And you're going to name it Clip Viewer. And you hit OK.
Sorry, guys. I'm really computer illiterate here.
Now go to the stream channel. You're going to grab that first clip.
Copy link?
Copy link, yep. So, for everyone's context right now, put the URL right there.
So, boop.
We have a hydrate from Mr. Brawl.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Brawl.
And we want to set this to 1920 by 1080.
Although, Sagrell should actually drink it, because you actually read more than I did, I think.
We're about even. 1080.
Okay.
Oh dear.
Oopsie. What did you
Get going. Indeed.
Okay, hold on. Let's fix this part first.
Technical difficulties, my friends.
Alright. Now we're gonna put it under you. So that way. So, anyways, context, everybody. This is another
Thank you, Mr. Brawl.
This is another VTuber named Osric Teller, who he and I had a little bit of an encounter on Twitter. He posted that he would like to talk about VTuber lore, and while we haven't been very open about ours yet, I thought we would get his opinions along with his friends during his last stream on Friday. So,
do you have the other one ready to go?
yeah, the other one is right here. We'll just have to change the link.
Why don't you just hit Control, or copy it, so that way we can do that.
Copy link. So, just so everyone has context, it should be able to be heard. Just let us know if you guys can hear it.
Keep it going there. All right. Next up, we have a few Fae here.
Coming through then?
I can hear it.
All right. How from Cafe Darcadia. How about us? Sagrell and Raina Darcadia,
Raina.
I
owners
like
of the
his
Cafe
layout.
Darcadia.
It is very nice.
We came over from the Feywild,
And he has a really good reading voice
He
too.
does.
always with the Fey here, to read stories, play video games, and serve treats. We're both
Keep it going.
indeed. Keep it
Did it
going
already
there.
loop? Yeah,
All right,
it already
next
moved.
up we have
Right, like I
a
said,
few
this was
Fey here.
This was a 2-part clip I had to do.
Oh,
All right. How from Cafe Darcadia.
And
How
changing-
about us?
changing it to part
Sagrell
2
and
because
Raina
only
Darcadia,
the
owners
actual
of the
streamer
Cafe
can.
Darcadia.
Okay, so we've got the second
Yes.
part of it.
just it applies to all walks of life.
Precisely. But yeah, I also just like that it's a couple as well. It's just couple VTubers. I think it's just always so sweet, and like also a lot of potential of like what they could do with like their own stories as well.
Yeah, and again, like the clothing choices
That's
are
sweet.
just
That's
they're
very
great.
sweet.
They're so detailed. Just it speaks volumes to their personality.
I'm just trying to make sure that I can see
Definitely.
the
Like,
bottom of
oh,
the
there's a little pocket
says-
watch there for
Nice.
Sagrell. Really like the dress that Raina's wearing.
that.
Yeah, he's kind of gives off like not full on butler,
Yeah.
but kind of the butlery vibe.
They kind of at least, but like there's that there's that time mode. It'd be cool to see how they would use that.
Has
You
it
know.
looped?
And they
Not
haven't
yet.
really gone too much into like perhaps their own like abilities as Fae,
Not
but
yet.
that's at the same time VTuber lore isn't always a warden
Is
There it is.
And it's looped.
it applies to all walks of life.
precisely.
And
But yeah, I
so-
also just like that it's a couple as well. It's
Alright,
just
so hold on.
couple VTubers. I think it's just
Hold on.
always
Hold on.
so sweet and like also a lot of
All right.
All right, so that was another VTuber talking about Sagrell and myself. As Sagrell is attempting to
Delete it. Delete the viewer. Move.
yeah,
There we go.
he's trying to help me out here. Because he's been here longer than I have, so I'm still getting used to things. But yeah, so there was another VTuber that was actually talking about us, and he actually did mention that. Don't know if anybody else noticed, but Sagrell and I actually do have matching chokers. So, is this one you, sweetie? Yep.
that's
So
me.
let's bring you a little bit closer here, and bring you up a little bit bigger.
Expando.
Yep. So that way you can see that we actually do have matching chokers. And so I don't know if anybody's ever noticed, because I'm pretty sure they haven't seen your full avatar. He does actually have a pocket watch, which, if anybody knows anything about the Fae, time runs very interestingly. Sometimes it runs fast, sometimes it runs slow compared to when you're not over the hedge.
Well, my pocket watch is tuned for human time, so that way, if it starts running fast, it lets me know that it's running fast for humans. If it's running slow for humans.
Yes, because our lifespans are also differently, so we have
And
to
not
be.
so much affected by it either.
That's true. We also have to be careful and considerate about that. And but yeah, he was also saying that Sagrell looks like a butler, which he kind of does. I'm not even gonna lie, he
Not
kind of
even going
does.
to take offense to that.
Yeah,
I like this style.
I know you do. And I kind of like my dress. It's cute. We're not going there.
Are you telling me I'm one hell of a butler?
You're not Sebastian.
Oh, but
No,
honey.
no, no, dude.
Honey.
No.
I love you.
You mainly run the bar. I'm the one that cleans up. So that means I'd be the hell of a butler.
Hey, just because I run it doesn't mean I can't technically be a butler as well.
Yeah, but if you're a butler, you have to buttle.
But I do buttle for you.
Yeah, but you have to buttle for the patrons, or it doesn't count.
Yeah, I'm one hell of we are one hell of a pair of fae.
Yeah, that works. Thank you, Oro. But yeah, so that was another VTuber rating us, and
Rating, not rating.
rating. I'm
Yes.
sorry, I'm still working on my words. They're difficult.
Yes, I know.
Now, would anybody be interested in listening to Coffee read a story from Norse mythology? Okay, then how about we do this? I'm gonna switch the model so it's not as goofy. How do I do this one?
Okay, so for that one, you need to have your.
My
you need
hair's
to-
in my way.
So what you need to do is you need to hide that one.
So boop.
You're gonna make a new source.
There's another one.
Yep. And you're gonna do an image, yep. And you're gonna say, "My still." Hit OK.
Okay.
And then you're gonna browse.
Browse.
And you're gonna go find your one under that file that we made for you before.
Do.
Should be under assets.
Documents. This one.
Nope, not that one. Nope. Assets. Oh, you don't have your assets. It's weird.
Mm-mm.
Give me one moment. I'll send it over to you by Discord, love.
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
I don't know why you don't have your own assets.
I think I did.
It may have just gotten misplaced.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I tend to do that a lot. You're the one that's more tech savvy, my dear.
Well, think my human family for that one. I think I've introduced you to my human mom.
It's been a while.
It's been, what, almost 2 years now?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, save that to your asset folder, my love.
Documents. Streaming assets. Right here?
Yep, save it there.
Boop.
And then, now you should be able to browse and find it in that same spot. Mm-hmm. Hit OK.
So I'm going to put myself, like, right there.
And then go to the VC face.
Here?
VC. No, you actually got to go to VC face down here. Love.
Oh, that's right. So
Right. Open up the menu. And you're going to go to Avatar
selection. And let's make this less awkward.
And then hit select.
Whoop.
There we go.
And poof! We switched spots. So.
Alright.
My husband's going to be taking over first a little bit.
So I'm thinking the story of Baldr would be good.
Yeah, that would actually be very interesting, considering our friend Mr. Brawl, or not Mr. Brawl. What is it?
Star Oni.
Staroni. I always thought his name was pronounced Staroni.
Like macaroni and cheese.
Kinda. He never said it.
All right. So let me. Thank you.
There you go.
Hold my page for me just a second, because my book does not like to cooperate sometimes.
I need to scoot.
Yep.
To get on the camera.
Yep.
There it is.
Alrighty then. Everyone hear me?
See if Staroni's even in the chat.
Star Oni's in the chat. That's going to be absolutely hilarious. I don't see him.
He's not.
You know?
He's not.
This is fine. So, this book does like to use the actual Old Germanic as well as the loves to actually explain the history as well as some of the other stories. So I'm going to try to crop those parts out as I read so that we get the story and not all the history necessarily. However, just a reminder, we do a lot of the stories of Norse are actually passed down orally. So there will be a lot of phrasing such as "we are told," what we have understood being added to the story. To Odin and Frigga, we are told, were born twin sons as dissimilar in character and physical appearance
Slow down, my love, slow down.
as it was possible for two children to be. Hodr, god of darkness, was somber, taciturn, and blind, like the obscurity of sin, which he was supposed to symbolize, while his brother Baldr, the beautiful, was worshipped as the pure and radiant god of innocence and light. From his snowy brow and golden locks seemed to radiate beams of sunshine which gladdened the hearts of gods and men, by whom he was equally beloved. Of all the 12 rounds of Odin's throne, Baldr the Beautiful alone, the sun god, good and pure and bright, was loved by all, and as all love light. The youthful Baldr attained his full growth with marvelous rapidity, and was early admitted into the council of the gods. He took up his abode in the palace of Breidablik, whose silver roof rested upon golden pillars.
Slow, dear, slow.
I am reading slow, actually.
No, you're not.
I'm reading at a very natural pace for me.
For you, yes, dear. But not when you're supposed to be reading stories.
So, he took up his abode in the palace of Breidablik, whose silver roof rested upon golden pillars, and whose purity was such that nothing common or unclean was ever allowed within its precincts. And here he lived in perfect unity with his young wife Nanna, which means blossom,
Daughter of Nip,
the daughter of Nip, which means bud,
a
And-
beauty and charming.
a beautiful and charming goddess. The god of light was well versed in the science of runes, which were carved on his tongue. He knew the various virtues of simples, one of which, the chamomile, was called Baldr's brow, because its flower was as immaculately pure as his forehead. The only thing hidden from Baldr's radiant eyes was the perception of his own ultimate fate. His own home Breidablik, on whose columns Baldr graved the enchantments that recalled the dead to life. For wise he was, and many curious arts, postures of runes and healing herbs he knew, unhappy, but that art he did not know, to keep his own life safe and see the sun. There's some poetry added into these, so that's why I'm reading them. As it was so natural for Baldr the Beautiful to be smiling and happy, the gods were greatly troubled when on the day...
I'm helping with pacing.
You're really not. You're actually tripping me up.
You're going too fast. Slow down.
The gods were greatly troubled when on the day that they began to notice a change in his bearing. Gradually, the light died out of his blue eyes, a careworn look came into his face, and his step grew heavy and slow. Odin and Frigga, seeing their beloved son evident depression, tenderly implored him to reveal the cause of his silent grief. Baldr, yielding at last to their anxious entreaties, confessed that his slumbers, instead of being peaceful and restful as of yore, had been strangely troubled by late of dark and oppressive dreams, which, although he could not clearly remember them when he awoke, constantly haunted him with a vague feeling of fear. To that god his slumber was most afflicting. His auspicious dreams seemed departed. When Odin and Frigga heard this, they were very uneasy, but declared that nothing would harm their universally beloved son. Nevertheless, when the anxious parents further talked the matter over, they confessed that they were also oppressed by strange forebodings, and, coming at last to believe that Baldr's life was really threatened, they proceeded to take measures to avert the danger. Frigga sent her servants in every direction, with strict charge to prevail upon all living creatures, all plants, metals, stones. In fact, every animate and inanimate being and thing, to register a solemn vow not to harm Baldr. All creation readily took the oath, for there was nothing on earth which did not love the radiant god. So the servants returned to Frigga, telling her that all had been duly sworn to save the mistletoe, growing upon the oak stem at the gate of Valhalla, and this, they added, was such a puny, inoffensive thing that no harm could be feared from it. On a course they resolved that they would send to every being assurance to solicit Baldr not to harm. All species swore oaths to spare him, Frigga received all their vows and compacts. Frigga now resumed her spinning in great content, for she felt assured that no harm could come to the child she loved above all. I'm trying to sit up, honey, but I'm not in my chair. Odin, in the meantime, had resolved to consult one of the dead Vala or prophetesses. I have sometimes with some words. Prophetesses. Mounted upon his 8-footed steed Sleipnir, he rode over the tremulous bridge Bifrost and over the weary road which leads to Gjallar and the entrance of Niflheim, where, passing through the Hellgate and by the Dog Garm, he penetrated into Hell's dark abode. Up rose the king of men with speed, and saddled straight in his coal-black steed, down the yawning steep he rode that leads to Hela's drear abode. Odin saw to his surprise that a feast was being spread in this dark realm, and that the couches had been covered with tapestry and rings of gold, as if some highly honored guests were expected. But he hurried on without pausing, until he reached the spot where the Vala had rested undisturbed for many a year, when he began to solemnly chant a magic spell and to trace the runes which had the power of raising the dead. Thrice pronounced in accents dread the thrilling verse that wakes the dead, till from out the hollow ground solely breathed a sullen sound. Suddenly the tomb opened, and the prophetess slowly rose, inquiring who had dared thus to trouble her long rest. Odin, not wishing her to know that he was the mighty father of gods and men, replied he was Vetgam, son of Valtam, and that he had awakened her to inquire for whom Hel was spreading her couches and preparing a festive meal. Now, quick reminder, Odin is a dickhead who likes to lie to people about who he is.
Odin's not that much of a dick. He's actually a good person.
He has like 12 different names and used it to get with the giantess Skadi.
Well, he married her.
Technically.
Yeah.
Well, he was still married to Frigga.
He took care of her, right?
I mean, technically in the stories, he ran away from her. But that's not this story.
Didn't he only have 2 wives, though?
He did.
That's better than Zeus.
You know, you're not wrong.
So, he also took care of all his kids, right?
Oh, yeah, he definitely took care of all of his kids.
So he's better than Zeus.
Oh, yeah, no, he's definitely better than Zeus. Odin is one of those few that's like, yeah, he's a little bit of a dickhead lying to people.
Slow down, hon. Slow down.
I am slowing down.
No, you're not, my love. You're speeding up. You're letting your northerner show.
Oh, my lord.
You're getting excited, so you're speeding up.
Yeah, Virgil. Zeus straight up turned into a goose to fuck some random lady, and then ended up resulting in the entire Trojan War.
Well, I mean, if you really want to go with weird, Odin had Loki turn into a horse.
That's not the story.
Distract another horse who had an 8-legged horse that became Odin's steed, so he rides his grandson.
Yes, we know. Everything involving Loki is just
weird.
Yep. We're leaving it at that. Loki and shapeshifting is weird. Anyways, to continue proper. In hollow tones, the prophetess confirmed all his fears by telling him that the expected guest was Baldr, who was destined to be slain by Hodor, his brother, the blind god of darkness. Hodor will hither, his glorious brother send. He of Baldr will the slayer be, and Odin's son of life bereave. By compulsion I have spoken. Now I will be silent. Despite the Vala's evident reluctance to speak further, Odin was not yet satisfied, as he prevailed upon her to tell him who would avenge the murdered god and call his slayer to account. For revenge and retaliation were considered a sacred duty by the races of the north. Then the prophetess told him, as Rosthiof had already predicted, that Rinda, the earth goddess, would bear a son to Odin, and that Vali, as this child would be named, would neither wash his face nor comb his hair until he had avenged upon Hodor the death of Baldr. In the caverns of the west, by Odin's fierce embrace compressed, a wondrous boy shall Rinda bear, whom ne'er shall comb his raven hair, nor wash his visage in the stream, nor see the sun's departing beam, till he on Hodor's corpse shall smile, flaming on the funeral pyre. When the reluctant Vala had thus spoken, Odin next asked, who would refuse to weep at Baldr's death? This incautious question showed a knowledge of the future which no mortal could possess, and immediately revealed to the Vala the identity of her visitor. Therefore, refusing to speak another word, she sank back into the silence of the tomb, declaring that none would be able to lure her out again until the end of the world was come. Hie thee hence, and boast at home, that never shall inquirer come to break my iron sleep again, till Locke has burst his tenfold chain. Never till substantial night has resumed her ancient right, till wrapped in flames, in ruin hurled, sinks the fabric of the world. Odin, having learned of the decrees of Orlog, which is fate, which he knew could not be set aside, now remounted his steed, and sadly wended his way back to Asgard, thinking of the time, not far distant, when his beloved son would be no more seen in the heavenly abodes, and when the light of his presence would have vanished forever. On entering Gladsheim, however, Odin was somewhat reassured by the intelligence, promptly conveyed to him by Frigga, that all things under the sun had promised they would not harm Baldr, and feeling convinced that if nothing would slay their beloved son, he must surely continue to gladden the gods and men with his presence, he cast care aside and resigned himself to the pleasures of the festive horde. The playground. Now we're moving on to a little bit later in this. The playgrounds of the gods was situated on the green plains of Ida, and was called Idavold. Here the gods would resort when in sportive mood, and their favorite game was to throw their golden discs, which they could cast with great skill. They had returned to this wonted pastime with redoubled zest, since the cloud which had oppressed their spirits had been dispersed by the precautions of Frigga. Wearied at last, however, of the accustomed sport, they bethought them a new game. They had learned that Baldr could not be harmed by any missile, so they amused themselves by casting all manner of weapons, stones, and what have you at him, certain that no matter how cleverly they tried, and how accurately they aimed, the objects, having sworn not to injure him, would either glance aside or fall short. This new amusement proved to be so fascinating that soon all the gods gathered around Baldr, greeting each new failure to hurt him with prolonged shouts of laughter. These bursts of merriment excited the curiosity of Frigga, who sat spinning at Fensalir, and seeing an old woman pass by her dwelling, she bade her pause and tell what the gods were doing to provoke such great hilarity. The old woman was none other than Loki in disguise, and he answered Frigga that the gods were throwing stones and other missiles, blunt and sharp, at Baldr, who stood smiling and unharmed in their midst, challenging them to touch him. The goddess smiled and resumed their work, saying that it was quite natural that nothing should harm Baldr, as all things loved the light, of which he was the emblem, and had solemnly sworn not to injure him. Loki, the personification of fire, was greatly chagrined upon hearing this, for he was jealous of Baldr, the sun, who so entirely eclipsed him, and who was so generally beloved, while he was feared and avoided as much as possible. But he cleverly concealed his vexation, and inquired Frigga of whether she was quite sure that all objects had joined the league. Frigga proudly answered that she had received the solemn oath of all things. A harmless little parasite, the mistletoe, which grew on the oak near Valhalla's gate, was the only exception, and this was too small and weak to be feared. This information was all that Loki wanted, and bidding adieu to Frigga, he hobbled off. As soon as he was safely out of sight, however, he resumed his wonted form and hastened to Valhalla, where at the gate he found the oak and the mistletoe, as indicated by Frigga. Then by exercise of magic arts, he imparted to the parasite a size and hardness quite unnatural to it. From the wooden stem he deftly fashioned a shaft, which he hastened back to Idavold, where the gods were still hurling missiles at Baldr, Hodor alone leaning mournfully against the tree all the while, and taking no part in the game. Carelessly, Loki approached the bawling god, and assuming an appearance of interest, he inquired the cause of his melancholy, at the same time artfully insinuating that pride and indifference prevented him from participating in the sport. In answer to these remarks, Hodor pleaded that only his blindness deterred him from taking part in the new game. And when Loki put the mistletoe shaft in his hand and led him into the midst of the circle, indicating the direction of the novel target, Hodor threw his shaft boldly, but to his dismay, instead of the loud laughter which he expected, a shuddering cry of horror fell upon his ear, for Baldr the Beautiful had fallen to the ground, pierced by the fatal mistletoe. So on the floor lay Baldr dead, and round lay thickly strewn swords, axes, darts, and spears, which all the gods in sport had idly thrown. At Baldr, whom no weapon pierced or clove, but in his breast stood fixed the fatal bow of mistletoe, which Lok, the accuser, gave to Hodor, and unwittingly Hodor threw, gainst that alone had Baldr's life no charm. In dire anxiety, the gods crowd around their beloved companion, but alas, life was quite extinct, and all their efforts to revive the fallen sun god were unavailing. Inconsolable at their loss, they now turned angrily upon Hodor, whom they would there and then have slain had they not been restrained by the law of the gods that no willful deed of violence should desecrate their peace steads. The sound of their loud lamentation brought the goddesses in hot haste to the dreadful scene, and when Frigga saw that her darling was dead, she passionately implored the gods to go to Niflheim and entreat Hel to release her victim, for the earth could not exist happily without him. As the road was rough and painful in the extreme, none of the gods would volunteer at first to go. But when Frigga promised that she and Odin would reward the messenger by loving him above all the Aesir, which are the half of the Norse pantheon, just for context, Hermod signified his readiness to execute the commission. To enable him to do so, Odin lent him Sleipnir, his noble steed, who was not wont to allow any but Odin upon his back, set off without demur upon the dark road which his hooves have beaten twice before. Meantime, Odin caused the body of Baldr to be removed to Breidablik, and he directed the gods to go to the forest and cut down the huge pines to build a worthy pyre. But when the gods were to the forest gone, Hermod led Sleipnir from Valhalla forth, and saddled him. Before that, Sleipnir brooked no meaner hand than Odin on his mane. On his broad back no lesser rider bore, yet docile now he stood at Hermod's side, arching his neck and glad to be bestrode. Knowing the god they went to seek, how dear. But Hermod mounted him, and sadly fared, in silence up the dark untravelled road, which branches from the north of heaven, and went all day, and daylight waned, and night came on. And all that night he rode, and journeyed so, 9 days, 9 nights toward the northern ice, through valleys deep engulfed by roaring streams. And on the 10th morn he beheld the bridge which spans the golden arches Gjall stream, and on the bridge a damsel watching armed, in the straight passage at the further end, where the road issues between wailing rocks. While Hermod was speeding along the cheerless road which led to Niflheim, the gods hewed and carried down to the shore a vast amount of fuel, which they piled upon the deck of Baldr's dragon ship, Ringorn, constructing an elaborate funeral pyre. According to custom, this was decorated with tapestry hangings, garlands of flowers, vessels and weapons of all kinds, golden rings, and countless objects of value, ere the immaculate corpse, richly attired, was brought and laid upon it. One by one the gods now drew near to take a last farewell of their beloved companion, and as Nanna bent over him, her loving heart broke, and she fell lifeless by his side. Seeing this, the gods reverently laid her beside her husband, that she might accompany him even in death. And after they had slain his horse and hounds and twined the pyre with thorns, the emblems of sleep, Odin, the last of the gods, drew near. In a token of affection for the dead and the sorrow of his loss, all had lain their most precious possessions upon the pyre, and Odin, bending down, now added onto the offerings his magic ring Draupnir. It was noted by the assembled gods that he was whispering in his dead son's ear, but none were near enough to hear what word he said. These sad preliminaries ended, and the gods now prepared to launch the ship, but found that the heavy load of fuel and treasures resisted their combined efforts, and they could not make the vessel stir an inch. The mountain giants, witnessing the scene from afar, noticed their quandary, and now drew near, and said they knew of the giantess named Hirokin, who dwelt in Jotunheim, and was strong enough to launch the vessel without any other aid. The gods therefore bade one of the storm giants hasten off to summon Hirokin, and soon appeared, mounted upon a gigantic wolf, by which she guided by a bridle made of writhing snakes. Riding down to the shore, the giantess dismounted, and haughtily signified her readiness to give the required aid, if in the meantime the gods would take charge of her steed. Odin immediately dispatched 4 of his maddest berserkers to hold the wolf, but in spite of their phenomenal strength, they could not restrain the monstrous creature until the giantess had thrown it down and bound it fast. Hirokin, seeing now that they would be able to manage her refractory steed, strode along the strand to where, high up from the water's edge, lay Baldr's mighty ship Ringhorn. 70 ells and 4 extended, on the grass the vessels kneel. High above it, gilt and splendid, rose the figurehead ferocious, with its crest of steel. Setting her shoulder against its stern, and with supreme effort, she sent it with a rush into the water. Such was the weight of the mass, however, and the rapidity with which it shot down to the sea, that the earth shook as if from an earthquake, and the rollers on which the ship glided caught fire from the friction. The unexpected shock almost caused the gods to lose their balance, and this so angered Thor that he raised his hammer and would have slain the giantess had he not been restrained by his companions. Easily appeased, as usual, for Thor's temper, although quickly roused, was evanescent. He now boarded the vessel once more to consecrate the funeral pile with his sacred hammer. As he was performing the ceremony, the dwarf Lit provokingly stumbled into his way, whereupon Thor, who had not entirely recovered from his equanimity, kicked him into the fire, which he had just kindled with a thorn, and the dwarf was burned to ashes with the bodies of the divine pair. Yeah, he just fucking kicked the dwarf into the fire because the dwarf got in the way. Soon after, the great ship drifted out to sea. The flames of the pyre presented a magnificent spectacle, which assumed a greater glory with every passing moment, until, when the vessel neared the western horizon, seemed as if the sea and sky were on fire. Sadly, the gods watched the glowing ship and its precious freight, until suddenly it plunged into the waves and disappeared. Nor did they turn aside to return to Asgard until the last spark of light had vanished, and the world, in a token of mourning for Baldr of the Good, was enveloped in a mantle of darkness. And I will stop there for tonight because I still have to go to work tonight. My love? Raina?
Yeah.
You passed out, didn't you?
Yeah.
I am only halfway through the story of Baldr.
Huh?
I'm only halfway through the story of Baldr.
Oh, I'm sorry. I fell asleep. What? I like listening to you reading. It's a nice turn of pace.
How are you guys feeling right now? Yeah, no, I can see that.
Yeah, see, he put his is good too. I actually conked out. He had to wake me up.
I didn't expect you to fall asleep on your stream.
No, I usually don't, but you kind of took it over, so.
So just remember, guys, for those of you who do end up eventually building up the points, we do have a redeem called Face Swap.
I do hope people don't use the sound alert ones while we're reading, please.
They have not, actually.
I greatly appreciate that. Feel free to spam them now.
Oh, yeah, you guys can definitely spam "Oh fuck Desuwap" for us. Just like this. Right. So, anyways, guys, we're going to be wrapping up stream here because, yep, there goes Brawl with it. We're going to be wrapping up stream here tonight, guys. This has been Raina's story time with me having a little bit of an appearance. Hey, Star, welcome to the party. We were reading
about
the story of Baldr. How's it going, Star? A little bit late to the party.
Isn't your character, Star, the one in our roleplay game, the one that's hosting Baldr right now?
Yeah. So, anyways, guys, I will be posting in our Discord and on Twitter our new schedule going forward for a little while.
Oh,
you've been here. You weren't here when I started.
No, we checked.
But I'll be posting a new schedule on Twitter and on our Discord, and then that way everyone will know what's going to be going on in the future. I will be having a stream on Monday.
We can also eventually do a question and answer and a Phalor thing.
We'll have to figure out when we can do that. What would be a good day? But I think the schedule for next week is probably going to be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and we'll probably either try Saturday again for another story time, or we could do Sunday. Which would you prefer?
I don't know. But we're going to have more sound alerts too, and they're going to actually, some of them probably going to be me.
Yeah, we'll try to get some more sound alerts set up so everyone's in the same loop. So, anyways, everybody.
Oh no, I'm sorry, Star.
Oh no, no, Star. Anyways, everybody, we're going to be wrapping up for this evening. Thank you guys all for coming.
Thank you guys.
I'm gonna go put Raina back to bed because she's very tired. It seems.
I'm sleepy.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a good reading voice. He just needs to work on his pacing.
Once I get into the swing of it, my pacing usually is pretty good. So, All right, everybody. Have a good night. And thanks for coming by.
Closing up the shop.
Still and silent, calm before the storm. Gold and diamond, jewels behind the throne. Into the night, out of the dark, take to the sky, chasing the stars. All that we said, all that we are, waiting to fly. This is the start. Hide and seek, reason and rhyme, grand and glorious. Living the dream.